All right, well, I will start. It's about 4:02. It looks like we got a couple more people in since 4 o'clock, so welcome everybody. My name is Chris Schmidt. I'm a senior associate planner for the city of Monterey, and I've been working with the project applicant, Adriana Cook of Air Studio Architects, and she's on the call here. So thank you again, everybody, for coming. We've also got our community development director, Kim Cole, and our administrative assistant, Sarah Zeal, and our, I believe, senior engineer, Tom Hardy of the Public Works Department, all city staff. So the intent of this meeting is to give an update on the hotel redevelopment project at the corner of Casa Verde Way and North Fremont Street. The address is 2101 North Fremont Street. And you can see a graphic that the applicant has put together on my PowerPoint here. And so I'll just give a really brief update of what the project is and kind of where we are with it. And the applicant's going to display the plans and give a brief presentation. And then we'll be able to take in questions and see if we can get some answers. And any other comments would be extremely helpful. So moving forward. So looking at the project description and status. So the project description, it looks like we got a few more people. Welcome everybody, thank you. So the project description is the demolition of the existing one-story 18 guest room hotel, the Casa Verde Inn, and the 134-seat restaurant, Barusso's Corner. And then the applicant is proposing to construct a 4-story, 42 guest room branded hotel with an associated 42 space parking lot. A few months ago, the project did go before the Airport Land Use Commission for the consistency review for consistency with the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, and the ALUC did approve, finding the project consistent with the plan. But we are still going through the city's entitlement process, which the city requires a use permit, which is to go before the Planning Commission, and an architectural review permit, which goes before the Architectural Review Committee. The city's still working on the CEQA documents, but we anticipate finishing those fairly soon. So with that, that's the brief update that I have on the project. I would ask that the applicant give her presentation now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Adriana Cook from Air Studio Architects. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. Can everybody see that? Okay. This is a hotel that we're very excited to work on here on the corner of Fremont and Casa Verde. Just to orient you, here's the corner that it's on. This is Fremont here. This is Casa Verde. And if you go about a block this way, it's the fairgrounds. And so the existing site was, like Chris mentioned, 1-story, 18 guest room hotel, but it did have a restaurant. So in theory, the occupant load was a lot higher than what we're proposing. Here's just some existing photos, just so you understand what was there. This top photo is looking across from Fremont Street. As you can see on the left-hand side is Barusso's Corner, and this is the adjacent hotel that's kind of all one building. This middle photo right here is looking off of Casa Verde, and you can kind of see how steep Casa Verde is, but also that the hotel kind of hugs the back end near the property line there at the adjacent apartments. And then this bottom left photo is at the corner of Fremont and Casa Verde looking back. Again, you can see how steep Casa Verde is there at that corner. And so we're proposing a 3-story, 42 guest room branded hotel. We'd like to bring the hotel to the corner and kind of create an entry point here at the corner of Fremont and Casa Verde. I think that was lacking before. It also gives a good buffer between our neighbors, the apartments in the back, and kind of tucks parking to the back and gets that off of North Fremont. And so like I mentioned before, maybe I'll go back one slide. This is a steep slope here. So if you come in on North Fremont, you're at one level, and then this kind of ramps down here so that on Casa Verde, it's almost like a sub-level or a partial basement is what we're proposing. And so this would just be back of house, and there's this lower lobby, and that mainly is just to get guests in and up to that main level. It also allows us to accommodate accessibility parking. And then this is the main floor that you would see on North Fremont. And this is all of the amenities for hotel guests, for fitness, lobby, a few offices. And then the upper two floors are the guest rooms. There's 18 queen rooms and 24 king rooms. And again, here's a view of the corner. Then this view is from Casa Verde looking back. So this down here would be your secondary entry. And then that's kind of like an atrium that goes up to the, well, not an atrium, but a double height volume that goes up to the ground floor. And I guess that's it. So I don't know if we take questions or what the process.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you very much. So I think at this time, we can start taking in some questions. I'm also going to put up on the screen once I can my contact information. If anybody has any other written questions, please write down my contact. And if you think of something later, you can certainly send it to me, and we can try to get you a response.
All right, and for Chris, I wanted to go ahead, if that's okay, and just announce to the public how they can call in or share some public comment via Zoom.
Perfect.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. Thank you again for attending and sharing your feedback today. We definitely encourage members of the public to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, as it is a secure service and will connect you with no lag time. If you'd like to provide a public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone. Make sure you join in time to accommodate any delays. And to join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, you can use the link or phone number posted on the informational flyer at monterey.org/planning. And if you would like to join by telephone, you could dial 833-568-8864, which is a toll-free number, and then enter the webinar ID, which is 160-072-1070. And if you're prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press pound. And of course, we also have detailed instructions for using Zoom at monterey.org/public meetings. To provide a public comment, you can simply raise your hand in Zoom, or if you're calling in on the phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. And public commenters will be muted until it is your turn to speak. So please turn off any TV or computer speakers, or simply go into another room while connected by phone, as any background noises can interfere with our broadcast today. And public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised. And we have designated a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting, dependent upon public feedback. So please stay within your time limit if we enforce that for you. And one quick note I wanted to make is that we will be looking at the attendees raising their hands first and calling them upon them in that order of hand raise. But you can also enter questions in the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and please feel free to share questions or feedback that way. However, we will be encouraging people to share their comments verbally with the group, but we will be reading those questions later on from the chat function. And it looks like we still have a few hands raised. So our first hand raise is Kayla Fossum. So I am going to go ahead, and I just enabled you to speak here in Zoom if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Kayla. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yeah, this is Kayla Fossum. I'm president of Villa Del Monte Neighborhood Association, and this hotel falls within our neighborhood boundaries. So I have a comment and two questions. First of all, I'd like to say I think the design is very pleasing. It's modern looking. I think it will be an upgrade to North Fremont. But the question I have, number one, it looks like it's 3 stories in the front, which would be consistent with the North Fremont specific plan, but 4 stories in the back. Am I seeing this correctly? And my second question would be, are there any retail stores on the bottom level, or is all of this space devoted to the hotel? Thank you.
Thanks, Kayla. I can try to answer that question. So you are seeing it correctly. It is technically a 4-story building. With the way that this property is zoned, which it's zoned as VAF, visitor accommodation facilities, the city's zoning code and charter development standards apply. And so in the case of this project, the height limit doesn't necessarily apply, but I think our applicant has gone at great lengths to try to actually develop a project that meets the specific plan as best as possible. So I think that addresses your comment. Now, for commercial uses, there are no commercial uses there. I believe just a pantry and a gym that are intended for guests of the hotel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and next up, looks like we have another comment from Dwayne. And if you could unmute Dwayne and share your questions or comments.
Yes, my concern is parking. If the hotel's full, where does the staff park? We're inundated with parking issues in our neighborhood, at least on this side of the freeway. And 42 spaces for 42 rooms doesn't leave much space for any additional parking that's going on. Can someone address that for me, please?
Yeah, Dwayne, thank you for your question. So the project does meet the development standards that are required for hotels. So we cannot require additional parking. I think what we would ask is that the hotel operator explain how they're going to locate employee parking during the peak season or holiday weekends or those types of things. So yeah.
And the owner is actually, he's not on this call, but I do know that on other projects in other cities, we've done like an incentive type of program, giving bus passes and things like that, that mitigate that for employees. And I'm sure, I mean, this is right on Fremont. It would make a lot of sense if you worked here to ride transit or to have some sort of car share or something like that. And so it's definitely a possibility that we could work something like that out. So.
Okay, well, let's consider making that more of just a possibility, Kim, okay?
I will add, they do have interior bicycle parking as well that the employees could utilize as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you, Dwayne, for your comment. Really appreciate your input.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. And next up, we have Mari. I just went ahead. If you could please unmute to share your public comment.
Hi, thank you. This is Mary Lynch Demler. I'm the volunteer who does bikemonterey.org the last 12 years. And I also have lived a few miles from that property since 1981. I live in an unincorporated section of rural Monterey County. And I bike that area and drive that area regularly. My concerns are mostly about the Casa Verde side. I think there are a few issues. And before I forget, you also mentioned you have interior bike parking. Could you please tell me how much, how many spaces? Are they bike lockers? Are they bike racks? What is it?
Yeah, it's actually a bike room right here. And the idea is that they'd be wall-mounted bike racks.
For
So we,
how many spaces?
shoot, I can get that number. It's above what's required. I do
Okay,
know that.
yeah, if you'd please give me the number later, that would be appreciated.
Okay, I can look that up now in the,
As far as the incentive about bus passes and so on, the service to that neighborhood, frequency, and where most of your hospitality workers are residing, the bus passes won't necessarily be that helpful, especially depending on various shifts. So I like Dwayne, have big concerns about the parking. The Casa Verde side, as Dwayne mentioned, between the freeway and North Fremont has already very congested with the parking. I'm very concerned about people on bikes getting doored, especially with a lot of visitors. We will hope that the hotel would encourage their visitors, perhaps with bike sharing or sharing stations or bike rental stations. We hope that the hotel would encourage its visitors to, go down Casa Verde and go down to the coastal trail and enjoy biking. However, that section of Casa Verde is very difficult already. If you'd like to see more details about that, you can go to bikemonterey.org. I have a specific post about the Casa Verde concerns. City of Monterey consultants during the 2011 transportation and parking charrettes, the consultants and I and TAMC's bike ped coordinator biked that neighborhood. It was already recognized that Casa Verde is very challenging. And so I would like to hear what the city and or the hotel owner plan to do to alleviate the danger in that section of Casa Verde. Also, with regard to that, let's see where my other note is. I think I've heard that there'll be a 12-foot sidewalk on the North Fremont side, and that the Casa Verde side, it was determined that they couldn't make a wider sidewalk. So again, I'm very, very concerned about safety, especially for visitors, but even for locals in that stretch of Casa Verde, closest to North Fremont. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your comment. Okay, and then it looks up like we have another hand raised from Richard. Richard, if you'd like to unmute and you could share your comments and feedback.
Good afternoon, Richard Marcelo, president of the Casanova Oakdale Neighborhood Association. I did pass out these plans to my neighborhood, and I had comments about the parking situation and employees, because we know how congested that area is, especially with the gas station across the street. I've been part of the Bikeway project on North Fremont and elsewhere in the city, and was proposing a bikeway on Mark Thomas. Then the pandemic hit. We looked to try to tie in Casa Verde with the rec trail, but removing parking was not an option for us on Casa Verde. So we're very interested on how we deal with the employee access and exit issues. And especially since we believe that every new hotel project should have some employee housing to cut the commute down. I see many rooms on the first floor and wondering if there's enough water to convert one or two of those rooms into employee housing. It's an ideal situation. It doesn't make sense to live in Gonzales and go to work here every day. It's just so congested. So that is the main issue is the employee parking, the bikeway access on Casa Verde, and maybe the hotel supplying electric bikes to the guests to get the cars off the road. Would be really appreciated. But look at all your space on getting key personnel living on site. That would be a really ideal situation. But other than that, we did not get any other comments on the design other than the paint scheme, because paint is the main architectural element in the modern design. But everybody has different opinions, and the market studies attract different customers. So I'm going to defer to the ARC on that subject. Other than that, it should be a great asset to the North Fremont specific plan. And especially since we got the bike trail and we're trying to connect with Canyon Del Rey in the 34 miles of trails. So I would like to know something about the timeline on construction. Thank you.
I can answer that a little bit on behalf of ownership. In regards to construction timeline, I think obviously we're trying to get through entitlements, and hopefully we can do that here in the next few months. From there, ownership is ready to hit the ground running. They want this built yesterday, so they're very excited and eager. And I know a lot of things went on hold due to COVID, financing, et cetera. But this is a project that is not held back by that, and they are very eager to build this. So just to give you that input.
So I'll just say in terms of the recommendation for electric bikes for guests, it's a very interesting recommendation. And then also looking at our bike connections along Casa Verde. Obviously, the city just completed the North Fremont Bikeway project, which should facilitate access up and down the corridor fairly well. But we can definitely look at bike connections as well. And then Mary Lynch, I heard a lot of your comments about bike sharing use, and then also on Casa Verde and looking at the bus service as well. So we'll make sure to take an additional look at those issues as we move forward. So thank you for your input. We really appreciate it.
And just taking a look, we don't have any additional hands raised to share comments at this time, but please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to share. However, I did want to bring attention to the group. We did have a couple of kind of questions and feedback submitted in the chat and the Q&A function. Kim, would now be a good time for me to read those out?
Yes, let's go ahead, and if you could read it and then we'll try to answer them, that'll be great.
Sure thing. So we got a question from Chris, who said it was mentioned that the project will be a standard stay branded hotel. Has the hotel brand been determined?
Yeah, it will be an Avid hotel, and that's an IHG brand. Yeah, it's only 42 guest rooms, and so it's somewhat limited in which brand it can be, I guess, if that makes any sense. But we're very excited to have Avid. It's a newer, more modern brand, and I think it will appeal to a lot of people in the area. So.
Thank you. And then the next comment was just more of a comment that was expressed that Casa Verde is too narrow for it to be a bike boulevard, which has been expressed in the past with the bike lane creation, and also spoken in support of the suggestions that Richard made during his commentary. And that looks like it's all in the chat, but we do have a Q&A comment, so let me check that. And the question that did pop up from Esther in the Q&A comment was, how can staff parking not have been addressed at this point?
So I'll go ahead and address that. So our zoning code standards for hotels were established by the voters of Monterey, and it's in the visitor accommodation facility zone. And those standards have been used for a long time. They're the same standards that are used for the hotels in Cannery Row that have been constructed, as well as now this proposed hotel. And they're assumed to include employee and for the actual rooms itself. And, you know, based on the overlap and how occupancy rates usually work, We haven't really seen a problem that I'm aware of with the hotel parking with other sites. So that's why it does meet our zoning code. We worked very hard with the applicant to ensure that it met our zoning requirement. And so that's the assumption with the parking requirement. But the ideas for electric bikes, looking at connections and potentially looking at where employees live and if bus passes are a secondary option just to reduce overall vehicle miles traveled to the site, those might be really welcome additions. So we have been thinking about them. So I just see Esther asked, when were these standards last updated? They were adopted by the voters via an initiative, and I know Richard's going to know a lot more about this than I do. And our zoning standards for hotels cannot change without going back to the voters of Monterey. They're physically in the charter of the city of Monterey. So I think that voter initiative was passed in the late 80s. And those are the current requirements that are adopted.
Just to add to that, we did do a traffic analysis as well, which is part of the CEQA process. So we are actually less, there's less demand for parking with this project than there was with the restaurant. And we have a report to back that up. So we have been, like Kim said, working on that. It's not an afterthought, I promise.
And just to share, it looks like we have another hand raised, but I did just want to share that a follow-up comment was made to the statements that were just shared. And that comment from Esther was Monterey voters may have decided, but the residents there are the ones affected by the parking. So just some commentary that was shared there. And it does look like, let's see, Mary is raising her hand. So I just went ahead, and if you'd like to unmute.
Thank you. I've heard a couple of times mentioned the less need for parking than the restaurant had, or on par with that. And I would just like to add that in my experience, that restaurant was never very busy. So you might want to take that into consideration. And then when there are Monterey County Fairground and Event Center has many events when it's not COVID time, and that always spills into parking issues in the neighborhoods. So that's something else to consider. And I wanted to just add also, I know our city staff, Kim Cole and others, are very enthused and supportive of biking. Our mayor bikes, some of the council members bike. So I know they're very sincere and enthused about biking. I was not part of the process. I was invited to be, but I cover the whole county. So I wasn't part of that process for planning the North Fremont bikeways. But one of the concerns the hotel guests will have, that the residents already have, is that those bike lanes were designed, the North Fremont bike lanes were designed to be within the median. It's the first in the state of California to be so designed. That makes it very difficult for accessing businesses along the route. I understand the number of driveways and intersections, the city determined that was the safest way to go. However, most people who actually use that neighborhood to bike in find that if they're in the car travel lane or on the sidewalk to try to access a business, because you certainly can't access it from the bike lane, you'll get drivers yelling at you, get in the bike lanes. And it's only going to be worse for the hotel guests who are less familiar with the neighborhood. Also, with regard to the hotel guest and e-bikes, I would really hope that there be efforts made to do some education, not just have rentals and e-bikes and bike share, whatever, on the property, but have some sort of a little bit of educational option there in a kiosk or something. Because especially with the e-bikes, our county as elsewhere, it's wonderful. I celebrate there's a lot more people biking because of e-assist and other types of e-bikes, the throttle bikes and so on. But it's also introducing new problems because of people who go too fast and don't really know what bike laws and riding skills are about. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I'm not seeing any additional hands raised in Zoom or any new questions coming in the chat function, but we'll keep an eye on that.
I think that there was one comment that was very brief, I think, from Richard Marcelo that we haven't really addressed. And I just wanted to bring it up is the sidewalk width along Casa Verde. I just want to make it clear that we did go back and forth with this applicant to see how feasible it is to widen that sidewalk or to make some sort of ADA compliant access that goes along the front of the hotel here. And ultimately, it was decided that at least the ADA path would generally be unsafe because you just simply could not be let out to a point along the Casa Verde sidewalk there that was not already fairly steep. But I was hoping maybe the applicant Adriana or our engineering staff Tom could comment on that as well, just to kind of explain what efforts we've gone through.
Yeah. Oh, there's Tom.
Go ahead, Adriana.
Yeah, I'll give a brief and maybe Tom can give a little more in depth. But North Fremont is fairly flat and Casa Verde is very steep. And so where the two meet, there's a hinge point, right? And so if we were to make the sidewalk any deeper, it's almost like a ledge or an unsafe slope in that corner. And that's what so that we're talking about kind of right up here, right at this section right here. And so it becomes a little bit unsafe because of the drop from the corner to where the 12 feet would be. And so we did do some extensive back and forth with Tom on trying to figure out what's the safest approach for that and not having a ledge or kind of almost falling down Casa Verde. And this is the safest approach that we came up with, but it wasn't because we didn't want to make anything, deeper. It was purely safety and tying into what's already there.
That was a good explanation, Adriana. And I think the only thing I would add is just if we were able to continue the wider sidewalk along North Fremont Street to Casa Verde, what has to happen is there has to be a landing. Picture someone in a wheelchair trying to go down Casa Verde. You want a landing there before it starts to get steep, and it just didn't work. Basically, we couldn't get the ramp, like a level ramp, anywhere near that sidewalk down Casa Verde just because of its slope along that way. So in the end, we were all looking specifically, and this was over the course of several weeks last fall, I believe. But it looks like it's going to be the safest way is just for someone. I was thinking of someone coming out of the building. What would be to come out the front door and then just come down to the public sidewalk on North Fremont and then continue around the corner down Casa Verde if they had to go that way. There was no benefit and actually made everything just a lot more difficult to construct to put a wider sidewalk over at that intersection right now.
Thank you, Tom and Adriana. And just to share, I'm going to go back to the hands that are raised in just a moment. But while those questions were being answered, we had a couple other comments that were shared. One was a question submitted by Richard in the Q&A function, and he just brought up that no one had addressed workforce housing, which was, I believe, a comment he had shared.
Yeah, I mean, Kim, if you want.
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to say first, the zoning doesn't allow workforce housing to be located on the site. It would require a vote of the people to change the zoning to allow housing on the site. It's not necessarily a bad idea. It's contrary to what the zoning regulations allow.
Thank you, Kim. And just one other comment that was shared before I go back to the hands that are raised was Kayla had submitted in the chat. May I suggest another public outreach be scheduled in the evening? A lot of people cannot attend during the daytime work hours. So just some feedback that was shared there. Oh, and then I did just get another question that was submitted by Esther. Wouldn't it be considered mixed use to allow housing?
So I think what's important to understand, Esther, is the visitor accommodation facility zoning is different than the mixed use along the rest of the corridor. Each of the hotels were sort of outlined in the ballot measure, and only visitor accommodation facilities with accessory commercial uses, so you can have an accessory commercial use on the site, is allowed. So I don't believe there's any housing allowed on this site per the VAF standards. Now, up and down the corridor in the sites that are not zoned VAF, you can consider housing. In fact, obviously, you know, our strategy is for mixed use infill housing along the rest of the corridor. So the hotel sites are distinct and different from the rest of the mixed use corridor.
Thank you, Kim, for responding to those questions and comments. And I do have Mary who's raising her hand. So Mary, if you could unmute and share any comments or questions, please.
Thank you. As you know, sidewalks are designed for pedestrian speeds, not really for people on bikes. However, City of Monterey does allow in their ordinance, except for the few places where there are signs indicating otherwise, that it is allowable to bike on a sidewalk. So less experienced people who bike tend to be the ones who do that. Hotel guests, and I'm betting, will probably be at least starting out on the sidewalk when they leave the hotel and head down Casa Verde to the trail. So important to consider that that will be a narrow sidewalk shared by people who bike and people who are walking or in a wheelchair or whatever, on skateboard, whatever they're doing. Also, I think when hotel guests return from the trail, and they'll be dealing with this thing that everyone deals with when they come up there, I always try to get to the top of that intersection and put my foot down so I can get a head start going across North Fremont. But it is very steep. So when people are returning from the trail, try to picture how are they going to be getting back to the hotel in a safe manner. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And let's see, it looks like we don't have any additional hands raised, but we did get some more commentary that arrived in the chat function. So Dwayne commented, I see that the new driveway on Casa Verde will remove at least one existing parking space. And then we did receive another comment here, looks like from Esther, and it was just stating missed opportunity for not considering allowing staff housing like a 24 hour, I think it's 24 manager MGR to be available, especially during event weekends. So that was another comment that was shared. And I'm not seeing any additional comments or hands raised at this time.
I'll just respond to Dwayne's comment. I haven't been to the site in a while to look at that curb, but viewing it from Google Maps, and I think it may be a little bit older image, that curb is all red. So there is no street parking along the curb.
Well, I know we really want to thank everybody for their comments today. We're happy to hold another evening session if that's desired by the community. I think we've also been invited to at least one neighborhood association meeting, and we'll make sure to try to meet the neighbors where they meet as well. So happy to do that. And I just really want to take this opportunity to say thank you. We will post this video on our website. So if people weren't able to attend, or if you want to send out the link to your neighborhood representatives or your neighbors, you're more than welcome to do that. So at least it starts the conversation. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. And Chris and Adrian, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I definitely would like to say thank you as well. I think we're not just trying to plop a hotel down wherever we can, and we want to be a part of the community. And so hearing everyone's concerns, we'd love to try and address those if possible, and really work towards having something the community can be excited about. So we appreciate all the feedback.
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. I think as staff, we think this is a good project, and the applicant's been working towards, meeting the goals of the city and the goals of the community. So I think ultimately, when we take it to our planning commission and architectural review committee, we'll have a really great project. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it. I don't see any more comments or hands raised. So please reach out to us. Chris will be providing his follow-up information, and we're happy to do that. Thank you so much. Everyone take care.